I'm Chad Ruthermans.
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
And welcome to NOCLIP Pocket, the first podcast to beat the iPhone. Today we're going to be talking about Simulacra, a game that came out in 2017 and was developed by Kaigen Games. So Simulacra is, I'm going to call it a horror game. I think most people would do the same.
I would agree.
But like, so much of this game is more... like, there isn't any necessary horror action or whatever going on for a lot of, like, the runtime of this experience.
Mm-hmm. What I thought, the comparison that I was drawing in my mind was that it's like the video game version of found footage.
Yeah, that's actually, I would say, like, Outlast is, like, the literal interpretation of that. And then this is on the other end of it, being like, this is the actual more immersive version, because at no point when you're playing a video game do you actually think, hey, I'm videotaping shit. Like, that isn't part of it, but you feel, because you are on your phone doing shit when you're playing this game.
Yeah, like, playing the phone version, it really feels like you found someone else's phones at certain points. Like, it was at least, like, between 5 and 10 times that I actually hit the home button on my actual phone instead of the one that's on the fake phone UI.
That's actually what I was going to ask, was if you ended up doing that. I play the PC version of the game, and I actually have to commend the number of different input methods that this game has, because I kept doing different shit to navigate around on the phone, and most of it worked. Which I was kind of impressed by. Like, you could click on the buttons, or you could, like, slide and swipe with the mouse,
right?
Or you could hit the escape key, and it would also go back. It was just pretty good.
Yeah, I like that you could click on links, or if you didn't remember where those links were, you could go to the web browser and actually just, like, use it like a web browser and just search for what you needed. That was cool.
Admittedly, I did not attempt to just, like, Google something on the phone web browser, so I can't swear as to how much of a simulation it was. I only ever, like, clicked on, I don't know if you can, oh yeah, because that was another thing, is you have the phone keyboard, which I assume functioned like a phone keyboard in the phone version.
Yeah.
And for the first, like, hour I was playing this game, I was clicking on the and
you could just type.
You could just type with the keyboard. Makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, but the game does, like, a really great job. Like, props to the UI designers, because it really just feels like you're using a phone. Like before everyone had smartphones, like, they had, like, the track phone version of, like, an iPhone.
Oh, like,
so like a nicer touchscreen, like, track phone. Like,
right.
That's exactly what the UI looks like.
Yeah, I feel like, and not only that, but, like, the UI in this game is the game that you play. It's like the mechanics, as well as the theming of the game itself, as well as a lot of the narrative, takes place entirely because of the UI, not just on it. Like, a lot of it has to do with the way that people interact with their phones, and the way that things just sort of, like, are laid out, I guess. And then they introduce narrative beats that are all also hardware related. So the game has, like, a battery, which is a time limit over the whole game, even though it doesn't actually tell you.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, if your phone runs out of battery, then it kicks you back to the title screen. You have to start over.
No. I was kind of, like, I was thinking as I was playing it that it would be cool if it, like, synced to your phones. Like, it displayed the amount of battery your phone actually had.
That would be convenient, for sure.
And it, like, showed the correct time, because I noticed that the time was on its own.
Yeah, it has, like, its own time. Well, and it progresses. This is, like, some of, like, the really cool things about the UI are the way that, like, the elements of the phone interact with the other things, so the time actually does progress in real time, but it starts at a certain period. I'm not exactly sure when, but, like, if somebody posts a tweet or if you send a message, it always takes the time from the actual phone. And then, of course, you have the segments where, like, the time's going fucking ape shit because you're in the Bizarro world phone.
I liked that you could bring like outside knowledge of like just how phones actually work and how you might actually interact with in this situation in the real world, because like one of like early on, like I just tried to call 911 and you're able to do that, but you'll just get stuck on hold.
Weird.
Yeah, like because you'll call 911 and you'll get like an automated thing, and then it's like press 5 for kidnappings or whatever. And so like I hit that, and I was like, oh man, did I just find the secret way to beat the game? Just to report
the kidnapping and then go to bed.
Yeah, but yeah, you just get stuck on hold. And like there's a point where like a police officer calls you, and like I tried to call him back a couple of times and that didn't work either, but I kept trying to like think about it, like what would I actually do in this situation, and it allows you to do little things like that to a certain degree, but never really to break the game or anything.
Yeah, that's like unfortunately with actual unbridled in like access to the internet and phone services, I feel like the game would just be broken. I feel like most people in this situation would not do the thing that the game tasks you with doing. And therefore some things had to be stripped out, because like the thing that comes to my mind is that they do such a good job, give or take a few different things, with the world building in the game, that it seems weird that they would let you call 911 at all, because that like because you'll never call 911 and be presented with an automated service. Like that seems that's just wild. Like how busy does your town have to be that they're like, emergencies, those can wait. We don't need to worry about that. But yeah, I don't know. The phone calls were actually kind of a point of friction for me, because it makes sense narratively speaking that people would attempt to call the phone, especially once they discover that you are not. Was it Anna is her name?
Yeah.
Yeah. I know it because their previous game, Sara is missing, is, from what I understand, this is just like the better version of that game. Like it's the improved version.
That's what I've heard as well.
But they both are like 4-letter first names that have 2 A's in them. I don't know. Just kind of like they bleed together in my mind for some reason.
Understandable.
But yeah, so people call you, but like it's the game, I feel like, tries to work so much harder than it needs to accomplish its goal of being spooky. And one of the things is having this like real fucking bad ringtone that's just like obnoxious as all hell and is like intended to be a jump scare every time that it happens.
Yeah, it's actually like the one jump scare I didn't really mind that much, because it was actually made sense that it would like come on and be really loud. But no, I agree. It was a bit cheap, and playing it on a phone, I kept forgetting this was also on PC, and I was like, man, like they should have like enabled the microphone and like let you say something back, or like given you like done something with that. But they don't do that at all, because you couldn't do that on the PC unless you had a mic plugged in.
And I feel like most people do, and it would be able to detect that theoretically. It's just like
you wouldn't want to assume.
Right. It would also be really difficult to like
voice recognition.
Yeah, have it actually pick up what you were saying and then respond at all. I think that the way that they do it is decent, but I feel like they could have probably separated those out, much like in my real life, where when anyone calls me, I would prefer that they get a hold of me in a different way. The same is true in Simulacra.
Yeah, or like it would have been kind of cool to have them call you and then have like the button to answer be like glitched out, and so that it just goes to voicemail and you have to listen to it.
Right, yeah.
Or something like that.
Even like the first time that you get a call from the detective agency or the police department or whoever it is, they let you pick up and they're like, hello? Must have gotten their voicemail, and then they just do it as a voicemail.
Yeah. I think the first call you get is from Greg, which is Anna's ex-boyfriend, and they try to explain it away by saying that like you as the character in the game or whatever can't understand like what he's saying or something. Like it gets all like jumbled or something like that. Like your options when you respond to him in text are like, all I hear is noise.
Yeah, so he's just static.
Yeah, but even though you can understand it.
Yeah. No, I like in my decision-making process, I kind of fought against that and never used those responses. I always said the ones that were like more I don't know, I think it made my character come off as more of like a huge D-bag than anything else.
Yeah, so I just don't really know what they were going for there. As if like are you the character using that as an excuse for not saying anything to him, or is it supposed to actually be the reason?
Right, because it has to be. They have to have like a silent self-insert protagonist for this protagonist. Debatable, but still, for the game to like kind of work the way that they want it to. Mm-hmm. But then at the same time, like they shouldn't acknowledge it, or at least they shouldn't as often as they do.
Yeah, I think it would have been better to just not acknowledge it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, all right. I'll give you a choice here. Do you want to talk more about the jump scares, or do you want to talk about those text responses?
We'll go with the jump scares first, because I feel like there's not as much to say about those.
Right. Yeah, I think I kind of have already gone over with you on a personal level the the only other real thing that I wanted to mention about them, which is that they super didn't feel necessary or warranted, but they were incredibly well done for what they were.
Yeah, I was just straight up not really a fan of the weird glitched out like moments, like the classic jump scare moments that they have in there. I think those like actively detract from the game just a little bit. But I really like the sound effects that they play. They recommend you play the game with headphones. Like a big screen comes up when you launch it. And every once in a while you'll hear like some breathing or like a door or something. And it makes you like paranoid. I think like it keeps you like a little bit on edge the whole time, which I think really adds to the experience. Yeah,
I think it's similar to what we talked about. I apologize for even bringing it up in the Pokemon Creepy Black episode on the nature of sort of like creepypasta, the way that those make you feel, where it's like it makes you just sort of want to like look over your shoulder, whether like because you don't believe necessarily that that someone is coming to murder you because you didn't post a MySpace bulletin, but you 100% feel uneasy. And I think this game does a pretty good job of sprinkling in enough ambient noise that isn't specifically horrifying, that when a knock on the door happens, it makes you kind of like, I'm not positive if that was real or not. Like, it was... For me, like, with the noise canceling headphones on, like, it even in that scenario, where there's no way in shit that a knock would have come through that clearly, I did have a few seconds of being like, is Andy knocking on the wall? Like, what's he doing?
Yeah, I had a similar experience. I was playing in my room with just earbuds in, and I heard it, and I would have swore it was real. Like, the sound design, A+ on that, because I got up and checked.
This game that's how the time limit comes into play. It's how long you spend checking to see if their bullshit was actually a thing that actually happened.
I only heard a knock once, though, so it was not an issue outside of that.
I heard them like 3 or 4 times, and they separate the stereo channels too, so it's like sometimes it comes from the right, which would be wild that somebody would be knocking on like the siding of the house and I'd be able to hear it. But the ones on the left, though, those were like legit as far as I could tell. But yeah, that's about it. Like the glitchy stuff on the phone, I didn't think was like egregious, but it is stupid and unnecessary. And like, yeah, like sure, you get somebody to kind of like sit up in their chair a little bit more than they were before and go like,
right.
But that's the best that you can really get out of somebody with it, and it just doesn't really add a whole lot. I do like the fact that her like pose in the photo changes slowly over the course of the game.
Yeah.
It's subtle enough that it takes you a really long time to actually notice.
Yeah, those are the best things in the game, or like the more subtle touches.
I don't know. I have a very stupid thing, but this isn't really a subtle thing. But the job interview guy. So we're going to talk about like how we go from these like the little things that they put into the UI to make it easier to navigate and also sort of like feel more like a real phone. The bits where you have to find the guy's the number for the job by like going through his like conversation, clicking on the link, and then filling out an application. Which, did you attempt to like put in actual information in that, or did you just kind of like smash the keyboard?
I put in actual information.
I did too, and was like not at all sure if it was gonna be necessary or not. But that when you finally do get that and get the text interview, because they have to somehow allow you to respond in fiction. The guy who's interviewing you, big quotes, interviewing you, is the least professional person in the entire world. Like, has to be.
Yeah, like they went out of their way to make him seem like a middle-aged guy trying to sound cool.
Right. But then he goes further than that, because like because I was assuming a fellow kid situation here.
Right.
And then they subverted my expectations by making him a complete idiot. Because it's weird to, like, if somebody was legitimately just trying to connect with the youth by using emoji and shit in their text, they would probably still abide by whatever corporate rules there are.
Right.
But the fact that this guy gets on there and he's like, oh yeah, a guy probably killed himself. Like,
Yeah, coolio.
yeah. Couldn't find him at his desk. They just had his phone there. I was like, yeah? You don't know? You've never spoken to me before. Yeah. This is a text message. It was real good.
Yeah, that definitely seemed like it didn't receive as much attention when they were writing that part of the script.
And it's like a key piece of information to solving like the very end of the game, because you have to know what happened to, what is that guy's name?
James?
Yeah, you have to know what happened to James' phone in order to, like, trick the simulacra at the end. Or whatever the fuck you actually do. And it was just, like, very surprising that they put it in such a weird place.
Yeah, I would agree with that. What did you think of the voice acting?
I think overall, it was really good. Overall, it was on par with a B horror movie, which is kind of how I associate this whole game.
I thought it was all pretty solid, but I thought that whoever played Greg was really bad.
Poor Greg, man.
But he was the only one. He felt like the weak link, and he had like a pretty big role in the game, so it was kind of unfortunate.
Well, they gave him...
I thought Anna was pretty good, and I thought Taylor was also pretty good.
Yeah, I think both of them... I think Taylor honestly might be the standout.
Yeah.
With the possible exception of the simulacra, like itself, yeah, I thought was really good.
That was well done.
The fact that they pronounce assimilate as assimulate, even though it's spelled assimilate on the screen, I hope was not an accident. They do it multiple times, so it has to be. Yeah, but that's really good. Like, that's one of those things where that just like screams like 70s sci-fi to me. Like, I imagine Asimov writing that line of dialogue. But yeah, I think Greg was given too emotionally dynamic a part for, I think, his range.
Yeah, like it feels like the director was like, you're a douche.
I'm going to get coffee.
That's your motivation.
Yeah. And that's really all, like, I don't think that his character really ever developed. Though I guess there's a way to make it develop a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't. He ended up going to jail in my playthrough.
You went to jail?
Yeah.
Man, I did not even realize that was a possibility.
Yeah, there's a part where you need to get information. You need to reboot her work computer or sync her phone to her work computer or whatever. And Greg is like, I'm just going to go in there and get it myself. And I'm like, no. Like, Taylor's idea was that we would call that's there and talk to somebody. And I tried to talk him out of going, but he just went anyway.
Yeah, I think he always goes.
Okay.
In my playthrough, he did not get arrested, though. Did you have to do the other part of it? Like, did you talk with the HR representative? And
yeah.
Okay, so you did all that, and then the creepy guy unlocked your computer, yeah?
Yeah. I went with Taylor's plan, and Greg just did his own thing.
Man, I wonder what I did differently to get Greg to leave town instead of get arrested.
I don't know.
I'm going to leave that text buzz that got picked up in because it's thematically appropriate. But, yeah, and that's actually one of the things... I mean, there are a couple of things that can kind of, like, spin off into that I do want to mention. Dealing with the fact that there were a whole bunch of different paths, and they all sort of revolve around how you respond to people. Like, apparently I fucked up something real late in the game that let... Ashley, is that her name? Yeah. Like in on the fact that I was not her. Like it was like the next to last conversation that you can have with her, and I was like, I even like went back and researched the question to make sure that I was correct, and they were like, nope, wrong. But I think it was just sort of an inconsistency in writing. But either way, I feel like the text in this like mostly text-based game probably could have used like a once-over. Like,
I agree.
Yeah, just like a punch-up more than anything, because it's really hard for them to establish voice, like, for individual people. Like, I feel like it isn't as consistent as it could be, and it makes it more difficult for you to respond that, I don't know, like, makes sense. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it has a little bit of that, like, Life is Strange, like, middle-aged people writing teenagers kind of feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
But the difference being that Life is Strange, like, leans into that, and this game does not want that to be the case. It wants it to sound natural. So I feel like, yeah, like another pass or two over it to make it sound more realistic would have benefited it a lot. And it started to really bug me as the game went on, like, because they put in intentional like spelling errors to make it seem more like natural, but like I feel like the percentage of time that they did that was too high. I feel like they needed to tone that down a bit.
Yeah, because when you are reading, the spelling errors are going to stand out most of the time, and I think that doing it too much breaks immersion more than you thinking, like, 3 hours after you finished the game, like, gee, it seemed like a lot of people had unnaturally good spelling and grammar.
Yeah, I think it ends up accomplishing the opposite of what they wanted, because it just felt weird to see that many spelling errors in like a game.
Right.
You know, I think they wanted it to like add to the immersion, where it just kind of made me think like, wow, there's a lot of like spelling errors in this text in this game I'm playing.
But even then, like, because that feeds into what I'm talking about with voice. Like, they could have had a character, like, I feel like Greg should have been misspelling shit all the time, using emojis, using shorthand,
and then, like,
shit like
Ashley
that.
wouldn't.
Yeah, would be, like, very anal about, like, making sure that all of her texts are spelled correctly or whatever. Like, and there are even parts where, like, they're drunk and they're written like they're drunk, but they aren't, like, I've invented new words when I was drunk before, and that's not what's happening
like
here.
Like an autocomplete text.
Yeah, like something that has, that's been predictive texted to all to shit. So, like, I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
I respect the effort that they put into it. I just feel like there's some of the text is weird where
Yeah.
it could have been not weird.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think that's one of the bigger weak spots, I think, is it doesn't have that extra level of polish that I think it would have benefited from.
Yeah. I do like the sort of open environment that the phone gives you, even if it's like unrealistically clean for a phone. Like I've never seen a phone that only had 8 apps on it.
Right.
Like it might like I think a new phone has more than 8 apps on it.
Right.
But the way that it's all set up like makes you feel like you really can just kind of like pop out and do stuff, which is great. Like I liked being able to get like a hint from someone and then before responding to them, like the game doesn't lock you there. So you can run out, check like, oh, in the photos they've said this about these. Like is there something there that I can find?
Well, even in the final confrontation with the Simulacra, you can just leave and go look at a couple of the other apps for information if you want it, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, I was a little too scared to do it. Like I didn't know if I was on a time limit with
like,
that.
You have to and like Taylor, depending on
who is doing whatever.
What you're doing. Taylor messaged me, and I had to like go to the chat app and talk to him and like leave that conversation. So
if I'm picking up everything properly here, in your situation, Greg did end up in jail, so there's a difference there. But did you like did Taylor go to save Anna?
Yeah, he showed up there.
Got murdered.
Yes. What happened was, I was presented with the ultimatum or whatever you want to call it, where it's either one of them has to die, and the objective of the whole game has been save Anna. So I figured I would just go with that, even though I wanted to try and save them both. It never gave me the option to like sacrifice myself, which is something I thought of doing. But my idea was the Simulacra's already got Anna. So I was like, okay, I'm going to bargain for her, and maybe I can also save Taylor before he gets assimilated as well. Like I thought maybe I could pull a fast one and save them both, but it did not happen that way.
I'm assuming... So I actually think that you did get a different ending than I did.
Yeah, Anna was saved, but apparently still linked with the Simulacra.
Right, so you basically freed
Taylor,
like a husk or something.
Yeah, and Taylor got assimilated.
Yeah, that's the... I forget what the fucking word for this is. Like the Capricious Genie situation of like all the endings of this game. Like apparently the golden ending is you save everybody.
I figured.
But the Simulacra isn't defeated. It just kind of moves on and keeps doing it
so
with
they
everybody
can make
else.
More games.
Probably, yeah. But the ending that I got is actually, I think, even shittier than the one that you got. Like, as far as, like, I think the ending was good, like, narratively. I just think that it is the one that reflects my performance being as bad as possible. Because it was basically, like, at the end, it was like, nobody trusted you. You were unable to conceal your identity. Everyone dies. Like... I had like the worst imagine. I think the ending is even called like No Hope or something. It's real bad. But yeah, I thought that I do like that I would never play this game more than once.
Yeah, I was gonna say that as well, and I think that's a little bit of a design flaw because the game clearly wants you to play it more than one time.
Yeah.
But like thinking back on it, like it's not clear where there were opportunities. Like all the decisions are so like on a smaller level that it's hard to imagine. Like I just think, oh man, I don't want to play it all the way through again and get like a similar or the same ending.
Right.
Or, you know.
Well, not only that, but like you can tell that there aren't major narrative branches. It just sort of like is Like the differences are going to be
Like detours.
yeah, like very short things. So your second time through the game is largely going to be the same, except you'll know the answers to stuff.
Right.
But that's really the best I can give it, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. So my favorite thing in the game was you have to get, I think her name was Cassie, who you find out matched with James on Spark,
Yes.
the Tinder stand-in app, and you have to go through her Jabber, the Twitter stand-in, her Jabber posts, to find her phone number. And it took me like just long enough to figure that puzzle out that it landed like super well with me. Because you scroll through and you see a post where she says, "I'm gonna do an Ask Me," because she's like supposedly like a Twitter celebrity.
Yeah.
And she's like, "I'm gonna do an Ask Me Anything if you can find the hidden phone number in my upcoming posts." And so I was thinking it would be like a hidden image, like a hidden object thing, where it would be in the photo. And then, so I had tunnel vision on that. And then it took me like just long enough to realize she's putting a different number in each of the posts, and you have to, write them all down to get the phone number.
Yeah. I do like the fact that it got me when it was, because I was scrolling. As people who follow the NOCLIP podcast Twitter probably know, I use Twitter a whole lot. So I wrote the number down backwards the first time, but also I was wrong about it because I was missing the one of them. Like I had one number wrong, and it was because I put down a number that was in the photo. And I was like, shit, like, if you're going to do this, at least don't put an errant number somewhere in the photo. It was like the parking garage one.
Yeah,
there was a 5 on the fucking... I was like, God damn it.
That was the one I focused on initially. I'm like, it's got to be in this picture.
Right. And honestly, I kind of wish that they had been more visual, like it had been like a photo thing, because it gives you all these options to like zoom in on photos and like... scroll around, and they never really do anything with it.
Yeah, like that part was the part of the game that felt the most like it delivered on the premise for me. Like I was like hunting through the phone for clues. Like I like that part a lot.
Yeah, I do like. There's an element of the game that is like about like relationships and like you're supposed to read through these things to get sort of a holistic idea of like what Anna's relationship was to all of these other people, and that's supposed to inform your decisions as you go through. But there are very few parts of the game that are very like fact-based, like specific, and that I kind of wanted a little bit more of that. I wanted more of a like Easter egg hunt.
Yeah.
Not all the time, because that would be boring, but just occasionally to make you really feel like you're figuring stuff out.
Yeah, Ashley was the character that they did that with, and I think she was the only one.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because they really leaned into, like, learning things about their relationship, and she would, like... Because you were supposed to not let her find out.
Right.
That you weren't Anna, so she would reference things, and you had to go back through the thread and find the text she was referencing so you could give her the correct answer. And yeah, she's the only character that they did that with.
Yeah, coincidentally, that's the thing that I fucked up on that made it so that I did not, I don't know, see that quest line through to the end, was she was like, who made your Spark profile or whatever? And I remember going up, because I remember them saying, like, I'll make it for you. But then, like, a week later, there's another text message where they're like, are you on Spark yet? And she says, no. And I was like, well, then she couldn't have made it. I made that profile. And they were like, Gah! Phone call from the police! You fucked up! Which felt a little bit excessive to me. I don't know. But yeah, like, stuff like that where you actually have to go back and find stuff, I think would be cool. I remember in an early text with her, she was like, I left my watch at your place. Can you check to see if you can find it. I think it was in the bathroom or something. So I went into the photo album, into like photos from the most recent week, and like found ones that were in the bathroom and like looked all around. And there's no fucking watch. Like at no point, the only character who wears a watch, which is a weird fact I know about this game, is Greg, only person who has a watch in photos. And that wasn't her watch, probably.
Yeah. I just told her I couldn't find it and never even thought that it was important.
That's because it's so early. I was hoping it was going to be important.
Yeah, fair enough. Now, did you... So, I don't remember, like, the exact order things happen with Ashley's progression, but did you get to the part where she, like, confesses that she is, like, gay? For Anna?
Yeah, no, I did not.
Bisexual or whatever. She has feelings for Anna.
Right. I didn't get to that. Yeah. I know from my research that you can like get an additional photo to use in the fake Spark profile that triggers some additional dialogue, but I don't know what that changes necessarily.
Yeah. What I ended up just telling her like that she was being silly when that happened and that diffused the situation. That was the last thing that ever happened with her. So she ends up being a non-element in the end, or at least in the path that I took.
Yeah, I don't know the specifics of how that ends up.
But yeah, she never found me out, but she didn't then do anything either.
Yeah, I think you have to have the extra photo in order to like trigger the best ending. But then you also have to like be real good friends with both Greg and Taylor. Greg definitely can't be in jail.
That seems like it would be impossible.
Yeah.
Given that like they dump on each other at every opportunity.
Well, you don't have to make them friends. You just have to
be friends.
Be friends with them. Okay. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. That's more or less what I got.
Yeah. One other thing, in maybe like after the first like third of the game, the phone reboots, and they ask you a bunch of questions, like you're like setting up the phone as yours. Like you had to answer a bunch of questions.
I'm glad you brought this
up. And they ask you a lot of weird things, like which would you rather see behind you? A head with no body or a body without a head,
right?
Like weird things like that, and that made me like convinced that the game was going to like access the camera and like actually show like a disembodied head behind me at some point, but they never do anything with that.
No,
and so it ends up being a letdown mechanically and narratively, because it never comes up in the story again either.
Right.
Like the fact that you set it up as your phone, I thought would like change things, but then it's just like, nope.
It just reverts
back to all of Anna's stuff. I was like, oh.
Yeah, I was all excited too because it had like you could put your actual name in and shit. Like,
yeah, I thought it would at least reference that. Like the Simulacra would call you by your real name.
Exactly.
It seems like an obvious thing to do.
I know that before the game released, they sent copies around to like YouTube streamers and stuff, and the game was pre-programmed to reference their actual names, which was, I mean, that's a nice touch, but why didn't we get that, I guess?
That is weird.
I don't know. It's...
In case you put in, like, dick and balls...
But you're really intentionally ruining your own experience at that point.
Yeah, but I could see like
me doing that.
No, but I could just see like designers being like extra worried about details like that.
They don't want to see a screenshot of their game online
that says like dick and balls.
That says dick and balls on it.
Exactly.
Now, I mean, and what's weird is that like the whole tone of that situation, like when it reboots and all that stuff happens, I really liked all of that. Like it felt just like it was parody very obviously, but the situation you were in was just dire enough that like it wasn't wholly funny and you had to sort of take it as part of the established environment that you were in. But in the end, all it does is like reinforce that the place she works for sucks.
Right.
Which isn't really, it's not even necessarily involved in the plot of the game, which is like, entirely focused on Spark as being like the thing.
Right.
And every other thing is just set dressing. So the fact that this kind, like, honestly, the Simulacra universe where everyone is basically a robot that exists online only and are dead is probably the good ending for this universe where this company exists and no one gives a shit about it.
It's actually Skynet.
It's basically Skynet.
Now, I was thinking, I compared this to found footage earlier, and I was thinking the premise of this is kind of like It Follows.
Yeah.
Or, like, the app keeps on, like, taking a new person unless you can, like, pass it on. Like, you can, like, sacrifice somebody else to get out.
Using, like, these very specific criteria.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's about all I got.
Yeah. So, do we have, then, final thoughts?
I liked this game a lot. We've talked about on a previous episode phone games, like taking advantage of the platform, and I think this might be the one that does it the best of anything I've ever played because it actually, mimics a phone. Like you're interacting with a phone is what you're doing in the game. And they do a lot of cool stuff with it, and I think this style of game could be pushed even further. The biggest thing, the problem that this game had was it needed a little bit more polish. It felt a little bit corny or like unnatural in a few places, and but overall, I thought it was a really cool. 4-hour experience that I'm glad you told me about because I've never ever heard of it and probably never would have.
I don't even know where I find these games a lot of the time. In this instance, I mean, obviously this one was apparently covered pretty extensively on YouTube because of the previous thing. But that's not really our scene.
Right.
But yeah, I agree with all of that. My main takeaway here is that I feel like this is a game that had a ton of potential. Mm-hmm. So much so that even though it didn't live up to a lot of it, it even exceeded parts of it. So like there are elements of this, like the phone simulation and sort of the ambiance and the way that like the environment is set up that I think are excellent. Like I think they really 10 out of 10 did a fucking amazing job with a lot of this stuff. Mm-hmm. That when the parts that sort of fall short, where people seem to speak a little bit unrealistically, the weird jump scares and shit like that, doesn't seem so bad in comparison. And I think that it wraps up its narrative with an interesting conclusion, but I definitely don't really want to replay it. So maybe they should scale that type of stuff back in the future. Mm-hmm. Thank you for listening to No Clip Pocket this week.
What are we talking about next time?
Next time, we're going to be talking about the Pokemon Trading Card League, the game, the movie.
Yes.
Okay.
Not the movie.
Right.
The game.
I don't know if a league was involved in the title.
I'm pretty sure
it's
called Pokemon Trading Card League.
It's the one that all of you played on the Game Boy Color 20 years ago with the black cartridge. That one.
Right. And your parents probably bought it for you because it said Pokemon on it.
Yeah, and it cost less than buying actual trading cards.
And it's probably where you actually learned to play the Pokemon trading card game.
Yep. Now that we've explained your history to you, because we are the Simulacra, become gods. We will die and become as gods. No, wait, hold on.
We will assimilate and become as gods.
Until that time, all of our contact information is on noclippodcast.com. There you can find links to our Twitter, our brand new shiny Discord, the YouTube channel where you can subscribe, watch all of our old episodes with a static image and a funny quote at the end. Go ahead and subscribe on iTunes, on Google Play, just wherever you found it. Hey, good work. Go ahead and leave a review. Say they congratulated me on finding this podcast. 5 stars.
Yep. And share it with a friend.
And smash that like button.
All that good stuff.
I almost just dumped water all over the microphones and shit. a game that was released in 2017. Man, I hard committed after I forgot when it came out.